Welcome, everybody. We're going to give you a minute or so to roll in. We're expecting a big crowd. This is our third appeals webinar. This is a really crazy year. It's an anomaly. Hopefully it's an anomaly. And by this coming fall for class of 2025, we'll be smooth sailing. Fingers crossed. We'll see. But it is a bit of a crazy year, so we want to keep showing up for you to talk about appeals. So we might have some people on here that have been on before and now you're ready, great, or you just want to hear it again because it is a lot of information. And I'm sure you've noticed that I have two new people here. You might know, you've heard of these people because Matt and I talk about them all the time. But I actually got them to come on live. So I have a star-studded group here tonight. So I will introduce them in a minute. But before I do that, let me go through a couple housekeeping things, and then we're going to get a little bit of information about you because it's always fun to know a few things before we get started. So if you've been on our webinars before, you've heard this a million times, but we love questions during our webinars. Please put them in the Q&A. I'll remind you if you forget, or one of us will, as opposed to the chat. I'm going to ask you to put some information in the chat, but your questions throughout the webinar, please put them in the Q&A. You can be anonymous, and that's where we're going to check. So please remember to do that. We are also recording this, and we will send out a recording. So if you have to leave early, or you get distracted, or you want your spouse to watch, you're all good on that front. And I love it. People are already putting questions in. That means it's going to be a fun group. That's great. But since I just made my spiel about the Q&A, I will ask everybody to put in the chat what the age of your graduating class for your child that you're on here for. I'm thinking we're going to have a lot of 24s. There we go. But if we have some 25s, that's great. You know, you're getting ahead of the game. And also do me a favor, there's some twins like me. Put in where you're coming from. Where are you in the country? Or you might be, we get people from out of the country too, which is great. There we go. We use Wyoming. I love it. We got everybody all over the country. Indiana. So we got the coast. I don't see an Oklahoma yet, Mike, but we might have one. Okay, thanks for that. And last but not least, put in if you've been on our webinars a lot, we affectionately call you guys our groupies, or if you're brand new, you're a newbie, or if you're kind of in the middle, go ahead and put that in. Okay, great. So we got a good smattering of everybody. Yeah. So that's helpful. That's helpful for us to know. So thank you very much for that. Also, I personally love emojis. So if something's really landing for you, just hit that emoji and then we know we got you guys out there and you're soaking up all this information. So don't be shy about the emojis. Thank you. Okay, so let's kick this off because we have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the FAFSA, and we've got a great, with having Mike Hinderman here, it's going to be great to kind of get some inside scoop on the latest and greatest on the FAFSA, State of the Union, if you will. And I'm also we'll talk about it with JP as well. But we are College Aid Pro. If you're a newbie, welcome, welcome. So we are College Aid Pro. We are all experts at College Aid Pro, and our mission truly is to eliminate the student debt crisis by empowering families to shop smarter for college. And educational presentations like this are a key part of that. And I'm Peg Keough. I'm the Director of Education here at CAP, and have a background in the financial industry. I'm a financial planner at heart, and over 10 years ago, just started focusing just on this, started my own business, and then joined CAP. Long story short, joined CAP in 2021. It beta tested the software and knew the founders for a while. I think my best credential is that I have twins, and I was just telling the guys in the green room, like Matt likes to say before we started, you know, I went through this process with my two and set expectations, and you will get through it. I did not have all this FAFSA craziness. when they were in, but did 8 FAFSAs, 4 years with 2 of them, and we got through it. They graduated on time. They're gainfully employed. They're happy adults. So you can get through it too. You need some deep breaths, and this year you need a lot of deep breaths and a lot of patience. But I'm here to tell you, I get it. I know where you're sitting. Both of these guys here have wee little kids compared to mine, so they're going to be there at some point, but they both have boatloads of experience working with tons of families. So let me just do an intro, and you guys can each, share anything that I missed. So we got Mike Hinderman, who you've heard us talk about. He's the director of scholarships at the University of Oklahoma. He has played different roles there. And what I love, being a financial planner at heart, he's been, what did you call it at Oklahoma, Mike? It was the money coach?
Money coach program.
Yeah, money coach program, where he sat down with families and really talked all around, like from a planning standpoint, which is super cool that their university does that. But he's involved in appeals, he's involved in a lot of stuff. So he is our superstar in all things public school. And I'm going to talk about at the end how you can book hours with these guys all around appeals. So it's a great opportunity to see them shine and understand everything they know. And then JP Schmidt, who is currently an admissions and financial aid expert, and is lending his expertise to us as a cap expert. But he spent quite a few years as the head of was at USC, and moved up the ranks and ended up running financial aid. So it's very interesting because Mike's at a FAFSA only school, and JP was at a school that of course requires the FAFSA, but also did their funding all around the CSS profile. So different ways of packaging. So you've got 2 people here that are going to share their insights, and they're here for questions. So don't be shy, about tapping their brains here. So you guys want to share anything else before we kick it off and talk about the FAFSA a little bit?
Just a reminder for everyone to put the questions in the Q&A. I see some coming through the chat. It just helps us stay organized.
Yeah, please. Yeah, put them in over there so we have one place to look. Thanks, Mike.
And then if you have a hard question, can you say like, "Dear Mike, I have a hard question"?
Definitely not Dear Peg, just Dear Mike. No JP or Peg on that one. No.
And just a shout out to all the SoCal people I see that said hello in the chat. So I saw some LBC and HBC, so you're all in my neighborhood. So hello.
Yeah, I try and not hold it against JP that he was at Southern Cal, because I'm not a Notre Dame grad, but I came from a family, so I'm like, ooh, in the football front. And I just have to compliment JP tonight on you guys are lucky. He brought out his professor sport coat for you, so you should all feel really special. He's got his tweed on. So
I was an adjunct professor for a short time there at USC, so there you go.
You just have a multifaceted resume. I'm learning something every day. Okay, now let's talk about the FAFSA before we get into the appeals. And actually, all this craziness with the FAFSA does lend to some unique appeal situation. So Mike, since you are boots on the ground now, can you just take a couple minutes? Because I think parents, it's hard. You guys are stressed because everything's been thrown up in the air. And of course, families are stressed, and you realize that. The universities realize that, and they're trying to make this flow as well as possible. Can you just talk about where we are? Because now families can make corrections. That one of the biggest tech glitches was you went in there and then the parent couldn't sign as a contributor, or the student couldn't sign. So it was not a completed submitted FAFSA. Now people can go in and take care of that. So kind of where are we at from your perspective at the university? How are you don't have to, get into nitty gritty of Oklahoma specifically, but, just where are we at with this from a university perspective?
Yeah, I think the context of, parents and students are stressed, as well as universities are stressed with everything that's happened, all the mistakes in the waiting game. I think that's a good context to go in this conversation, knowing that there's been so much uncertainty, and so that's caused a lot of stress on all angles, all sides of it. Where we are now is we're really getting to the point where schools are getting a lot more of their financial aid notification letters out and packaging students with accurate FAFSA information that's coming in. From a university perspective, uh, we are receiving FAFSA information, and the Department of Ed has also sent information on of the FAFSAs received, which ones are unimpacted by the errors that they had related to taxes, but they've also sent a list of ones that have potentially been impacted. So how that would reflect on you receiving a financial aid notification letter, some schools might wait until they know that it's an unimpacted FAFSA to package the student's financial aid and send that notification out. And some might not. Some might package with the potentially impacted FAFSA with a disclaimer saying the Department of Ed can reprocess this, and once that happens, we'll send you a new financial aid notification letter. So I think that more information is flowing, but we're still kind of in that in-between phase where with corrections coming in and reprocessed FAFSAs coming in, there's still a little uncertainty and a little challenge just knowing, is this truly what I'm getting, what I'm receiving?
Yeah,
So
yeah, and
that's
I'm
kind of
going to
where
talk about in a minute, because I'm sure we're getting questions right now saying, well, how do I know if my FAFSA was impacted? I know some schools have actually let families know, but I don't think that's the lion's share, right, Mike?
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if many weren't openly sharing that.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, it would
yeah,
just be another thing to do. But I'm going to show you in a minute how you through our support and in our software, how you can actually get good SAI estimates and how vital it is because of exactly what Mike's talking about. We're still like they've identified errors, they're sending it to the universities, and you're just sitting waiting, well, is this going to change or not? So okay, well that's helpful. Anything else that's going on now that you want to share with parents that can maybe help with all this, or advice around navigating it?
yeah, I think all universities are aware that the FAFSA issues are going on, and that ties directly in with the admissions office. You've seen probably most schools have bumped back their enrollment deposit date to May 15th or June 1st. Know that there's probably conversations going on internally of, extensions for individual cases because there's kind of this ongoing uncertainty with the FAFSA. Um, but that's a common conversation. I know we're talking with other SEC schools on, what are you doing? How are we trying to serve students? So schools are talking to each other on um, how to best serve students while trying to keep the guidelines or rules pretty equal across um, conferences.
Yeah, okay. Guys, I'm just putting this in here again. Please put your questions in the Q&A and we'll do our best to address them. Okay.
Hey, can I ask Mike a real quick question?
Yep,
And
absolutely.
you maybe said, and I misheard it, but because I get this a lot right now with the FAFSAs coming in late, and being reprocessed late. But like, do you, on average, when your school has the FAFSA and has all the financial aid stuff, guesstimate how long does it take to produce that financial aid offer letter?
Yeah, great question. From the point of we receive the FAFSA and we package, which can happen very quickly within a business day or two, it would probably be 2 or 3 business days before the financial aid notification letter goes out. So it's a relatively quick turnaround time. I'm thinking about those of you who are doing like corrections and that's going to the university. That should get there within 3 days. And then, if they're on top of it, I think packaging and notification letters would be going out, I'd say within a week.
Yeah, and that could differ from school to school, but that's great info. And somebody, is it too late to do a correction? Absolutely not. If you need to do a correction, you should do a correction. And it just went live recently, so it's not like it's been live for months and you haven't been in there. So And when all else fails, if you've got a few schools that are on the short list, you can always call them and ask. Like, I'm never shy about doing that. You know, if you're stressed about, I mean, if you've got a list of 15 schools, that would be more laborious. So. Okay, well, Mike, thanks for that. Let's dive in on appeals. And yeah, we'll have Mike share a little bit more throughout. And as I told both of you, you know, we're gonna flip back and forth here doing the slides, but don't be shy, JP and Mike, about interrupting me. It is most welcome. So there we are. I shared that already. So all of you got an email earlier today encouraging you to set up your free MyCap account. So JP, if you could put that link in the chat, it's just mycap.collegeaidpro.com. I'm going to share my screen, and as I said earlier, and Mike kind of touched on this, it truly is vital this year to do this. You need to know what your good estimates of your SAI. I would argue this is true for every year, but this year, because of the FAFSA issues, it's very, very important. So you'll see up here, you go in there, you click get started for free, you answer your onboarding questions. And if you're not sure, you can skip through and get to your dashboard. But up here where it says profile, you can go in there and edit any, like if you're not sure about your assets, you can just go through and skip it, but then make sure you go look them up and plug it in. All the financial questions in the profile, and there's not a lot. It takes about 4 minutes to get through all of it. That's how we're calculating these estimates that we're stressing you need to have. Because if you're not sure, am I one of those families that Mike was talking about where there's going to be something reprocessed? If you come in here and you see it, this is your federal SAI, which is what comes off of the FAFSA. That's what you want to look at, because that's the FAFSA SAI. The CSS profile, schools like Southern Cal require that as well as the FAFSA. That's your institutional SAI. And by the way, some of those schools have noticed they're still calling it an EFC, an expected family contribution. I know it's a little confusing, but just think of them as the same. The calculation behind the scenes isn't the same, but they're still cost of attendance minus SAI or minus EFC is how they figure out your financial need. That hasn't changed. But just real quick, it's important to set this up so you have these estimates. And then I'll talk a little bit later, but then we take the next step and we take that sticker price, that cost of attendance, and we're projecting what you might get from that college. And that's another key piece of data. And we'll touch on that in a little bit. So I strongly encourage you to set up that account. I can see a lot of you have, so that's great. And as we're talking, you can be looking at your situation and seeing how to use the software for your family's benefit, you know, tonight, tomorrow, and ongoing. So what can you be doing now based on what Mike shared, kind of a behind the scenes look? You can be making corrections. That includes adding schools. I know some kids submitted their FAFSA in February and then you couldn't get back in. If you were lucky enough to get it through and accurate without a tech glitch, that was great, but you couldn't log back in and add more schools. So now you can. So definitely don't wait on that. Get it in there. Like Mike was saying, you know, schools get it, and they're trying to be very efficient in packaging. That means creating your financial aid award package with merit, need-based aid loans, etc. It's to their benefit to get it to you quickly so that you can make decisions and say yes to their school, right? And it's to your benefit to get that in so they can do that. And again, know your SAI. And then also, we'll touch on this throughout tonight. You can be appealing now in certain circumstances, and we're going to talk about this, or at the very least, get your appeal ready because you have a good idea of what that college should be giving you if you're in our software. And then if it comes in and it's not as good as that, that's probably means you're going to appeal. So you can start thinking about it and getting ready potentially. So those are the things you can be doing if your child has mostly FAFSA schools and you're still in wait mode. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, JP.
All right. So ultimately, this whole presentation is about appeal. So what we're going to go through is, when should you appeal, and who do you appeal to, and should you appeal, and then if all that's yes, then how. So that's a lot of, I see a lot of the Q&As coming in over this stuff. So I'm just going to encourage you, let's put our listening ears on, and I'm going to kind of crank through this and try to get to, hopefully, provide a lot of clarity to all you on how we can help with this process. So let's go through it.
Oh, sorry. I can't answer questions as much because I got to pay attention. Okay.
All right. So first, let's talk about when. When should we be doing these appeals? And before we, can maybe answer that, I think we should pull back and take a step and just say, let's make sure we understand the offer letter. And I know some of you probably might not have an offer letter yet, but if you do, that's great. If you don't, just bear with me for a moment. But ultimately, and we'll show some examples of them, but ultimately, let's think about what's going to be in that offer letter. If you fill out a FAFSA, and if you're doing a school that uses a CSS profile, all of that is to apply for need-based aid. And so what we're hoping maybe is to qualify for some grant money, the free money. We like that stuff. And so that is all based upon that SAI calculation, or if you had kids before in college, the EFC, as it was called. But it's based on the financial aid formula that we've talked about in past seminars. Maybe another component in that award letter might be scholarship money, and scholarships are generally speaking are merit based. Maybe it's because they were just super great GPA, and they're like, wow, we want this kid here, and so they offered maybe a scholarship because they had a phenomenal GPA or a test score or something. And so scholarships like that usually have some sort of component about maintaining a certain GPA while they're in school, or things like that. But that's another type of free money. Those are the things we want, right? The grants and scholarships, we'd love to see that money, as that's helping reduce the overall net cost. Just remember though that grants, especially, or any of this other need-based aid, because I see this question a lot coming through, is we have to reapply every year for it. So as quick as roughly 6 months from now, you're going to be doing another FAFSA for your child's 25, 26 year, and then the year after and the year after. We have to reapply for all this every single year. Whereas the scholarships, if they were awarded some sort of scholarship, usually from admissions, their way they apply, they don't necessarily reapply for it. They just maintain it by keeping their grades up or whatever the requirements were. But the other kinds of financial aid you're going to see in that award letter is going to be work study. Potentially, you might see work study eligibility. If there is a determined need for it, as in the terms of the financial aid formula, if there is a need for work study, that they're going to award it to you, and it's a federal resource. And then there's going to be, for everybody, if you filled out a FAFSA, there is going to be the direct loans offered to your student, and it's ultimately for freshmen, it's going to be $5,500, so not a lot, but that's going to be offered to the student just for filling out the FAFSA. Depending on the financial aid award letter, it might mention a Parent Plus loan as a way to bridge the gap to help cover the cost. That's also comes essentially because you filled out the FAFSA. But it is, just understand, that's not free money. Loans we have to pay back. But those broad brushstrokes, those are the 4 components of the type of money you might see in an award letter: grants, scholarships, work study, and loans. And here's an example of an award letter that I'm going to say is not. I don't like it. I'll just be honest. I think it's deceptive, if you will, because with UC Davis, he goes, hey, our total cost of attendance almost $74,000, and hey, here's your contributions, and it adds up to also about 74,000. Or I'm sorry, no, it doesn't. It adds up to about 42,000. They tell us a little bit about for the student and the parents, and then hey, you need though, on top of what your contributions, you need another 31,000, right? And they put in here the Parent Plus loan as almost $65,000. There's the direct loans for the student, adds up to $5,500 for the student. But it makes it look like at the very bottom, you'll see remaining costs is $0. And it makes it feel like, hey, I got all this financial aid. And I've literally have had parents do this where they got an award letter like this, like, it's free. We got full financial aid. It's not costing us anything. And I'm like, no. You got to look at the components of that financial aid, and like that Parent Plus loan that's a parent loan, so it's very deceptive, I feel. And here's an example though from Drexel where I think it's much cleaner, more clear. You say, hey, they list the actual financial aid, the scholarships. They list the grants. They in this case there's a scholarship from the school. There's a grant from the school. There's some potential grants from the feds, but it's very clear this is the free money, and they add it up and told us what it adds for the year. And I'm sorry, Beg, go ahead into the next one. And so they're telling us like, hey, our total cost we think is, I'm going to round up, about $84,000. That free money we just showed you, that adds up to a little over $48,000. Your net cost is about $35,000. Like big, bold, they make it clear. I love this. And then they say, hey, basically some other options to help cover that net cost. There's going to be some federal work study eligibility. There's going to be some loan eligibility, direct loans for the student. Again, adds up to $5,500 freshman year. And then they put at the bottom, an explanation saying for basically to cover the rest of that gap, maybe parents, you look at a Parent Plus loan, or parents, we offer a payment plan, or, maybe it could be a combo. But this is I like this kind of a financial reward letter. It makes it really clear what is your real cost here.
Yeah, when Mike was talking about packaging, this is what he meant. This is them putting it all together and sending it out. So this is what you appeal, when you're appealing for, need-based aid, you need to have, oops, I forgot I had animation here. So that's what you're appealing. Okay. All right. So that one, here we go.
Yeah, so now let's talk about the types of appeals here. So in just real generic terms, I'm going to say, because again, when we appeal, let's say we want to appeal for more financial aid, what are we talking about? We're talking about we want more free money, right? So that scholarship bucket, if you will, most often, not always, but most often is coming from the admissions office. So I might do it. So if my student or my child has received, let's say, offers from multiple schools and it's great scholarship offers, but of course, the dream school for them maybe didn't give them as much or not at all. Maybe I'm going to go appeal to the admissions office and try to leverage those other scholarships and ask that admissions office, hey, can I be considered for something else? You tell them what else I did, how great I am. But typically speaking, I'm going to probably go to the admissions office to appeal for more merit aid. Whereas if I'm appealing for more grant money, that other free bucket, that's need-based. So that's going to definitely be addressed to the Office of Financial Aid. And I oftentimes, I feel like during my consults with a lot of families of these past few weeks, oftentimes their situation warrants where I'm telling them, you're going to appeal both, because you can. So it depends on the circumstance, of course, but oftentimes I feel like I'm finding myself saying, hey, I want your child to appeal to the admissions office. Hey, I want you guys to work on a combined appeal letter to the financial aid office. Like no stone left unturned is always my attitude. So I'm all about try to appeal and ask for every source possible.
Yeah, Mike, do you want to chime in here on anything what we talked about before the webinar?
Yeah, I think depending on type of school, if it's a school that meets all need or doesn't, there might be a combo that goes to the Office of Admissions for merit or need. So just looking at like OU, we're not a school that meets 100% of need. So there can be appeals that go to the Office of Admissions for merit and or need. Whereas what we have, if there's a change of financial circumstance, that would go to the financial aid office, but we don't really call that an appeal. We call that kind of a change of circumstance. So AGI went from a higher number in 2022 to a lower number. Maybe someone lost their job. Big financial changes, that would always go through the financial aid office. So like JP said, including both of those, doing both of those, it will look different from a merit and need-based approach, depending on the type of school.
Great, great. Thank you for that addition. Okay, should you appeal? I'll let you keep going there, JP.
Yeah. So, should you appeal? I sometimes struggle with this one when I consult with families, because I'm also, like I say, I leave no stone left unturned. I'm also the guy that says, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. So, or you miss every shot you don't take. So I might be, but yeah, I'll temper it and say, let's be realistic about what do I think my chances are. But I tend to favor on appealing, but some good, for sure, good reasons why, or what I'm looking for. Obvious one Mike just said, like if there's been a change in your circumstances, that special circumstance warrants reaching out and talking to the financial aid office, let's say. I will say, in general, private schools, might be a little biased since I was repping the private school, but we tend to have a little bit more money to give. But I'll look at the public schools too. One thing to think about is if you took a retirement distribution in the fiscal year being asked for on that FAFSA, in this case 2022, that retirement distribution is going to artificially bump up your AGI. That warrants a conversation with the financial aid office and say, I need to explain what that money was. And so I would definitely have that conversation. Business owners. I have done a lot of appeals with business owners this season, mainly because business owners didn't know how to evaluate their business. They over-evaluated their business and basically just overstated what potential assets they could draw upon when it came to appealing, paying for college. So been doing a lot of reevaluations on that regard. And then just obviously if other schools are giving us better awards, maybe because they meet need, a higher percentage of need, or maybe they gave us a better scholarship, anything that I can use to kind of just try to leverage and just ask, like I said, I will do that. Versus there are times when I'm, again, maybe it's not the best time to do an appeal. There are some circumstances when I wouldn't, and Peg wants to show that one.
Oh, sorry. I'm here.
No worries.
Sorry.
So I won't. It's probably too strong of a statement to say that public schools are a bad candidate for appeal. I mean, Mike clearly works at a public school and they do appeals, but if there's been no change in circumstances, that makes it a little harder. And again, though, it really is case by case. It's hard to give you a universal thing. For example, at where I was at USC, where we meet 100% of the financial need that we determined that you needed. If a family came to us and sent an appeal generically and said, hey, we just can't afford this, but we also had no change in our circumstances, that wouldn't have gone anywhere. There was nothing to appeal in that regard because we met the 100% need that we calculated. Whereas, admittedly, if there's a different school that doesn't meet your need, like where maybe they only meet on average 50% of the need because they don't have as much funding, in that situation, maybe you could go to them and say, hey, our circumstances haven't changed, but we need more money. If they, in essence, kind of shorted you on what you needed, maybe there is some room to talk and see what you can try to get out of them. So it really is hard to kind of say, just universally do this or don't do this in all circumstances. It is a case-by-case situation. It's where, I'll just say, if you have your free account set up with MyCap, and Peg will show it later, but that's where it's going to really help you kind of get a better sense of, does it make sense to or not.
Okay, so JP just did a great job of going through the award letters. When should you appeal? We're going to talk about how to appeal in a little bit, and Mike's already kind of touched on that. But when you're looking at a financial aid award letter and you saw a couple there, these are the key things that you need to see. And some schools don't even put the cost of attendance on their award letter, which is crazy because you don't even know what the price is, right? We didn't show you any of those, but I've seen them over the years. But you're not going to typically see an SAI. There are a few CSS profile schools that do show that. And because we're doing appeals, and we had Mike on tonight to chat, I didn't show as many award letters, but I have one in my slide deck where they say, hey, this is your SAI, which is lovely from an appeal standpoint, because then you kind of can get in their head and know what the school thinks your need is. And then, hey, that's not what I thought. And that's super helpful. So I'm going to share, I'm going to pull up in my my sample family again. And as JP just referenced a minute ago, let's look at this. So we talked about you've got your federal SAI, and then you've got your institutional SAI from a CSS profile school, which is great. That's the tip of the iceberg. This year, as I said, you need to know that. A couple people have written in the Q&A. I'm one of the flagged ones. So if what you saw on your FAFSA submission summary when you logged into your childstudentaid.gov account, you can see the SAI that was calculated. If that's very different from this, and you know you're flagged, you can see which way it's going, right? And you can start to see how we're projecting your net cost and start getting ready, as I said earlier, for a potential appeal. And once you get that financial aid award letter, you can actually go into our software here. You actually can click here on transfer and compare, or if you're on the dashboard, you just scroll down and you can very easily upload your award letters. Now, you want to upload what JP showed you, not a letter from Office of Admissions saying, congratulations, you got in, you got this Dean Scholarship for $20,000 a year, worth $80,000. That's lovely, but that's not the financial aid award letter from the Office of Financial Aid. Once you have that, and some of you I'm sure have these, some of you might not. If your kids are all FAFSA, you might not have received these yet. Hopefully you're going to be getting them soon, but it's super easy. You just click add offer, you put in the school. I'll just pick JMU where my daughter went, go Dukes. Click on the school, and then you just upload your file. And once you upload your file, a button's going to come up that says translate. You hit that button, and we're going to do the work for you. Everything that JP was talking about and how these awards can be confusing, we'll take all that complexity out of the picture for you. If they give the cost of attendance, we'll load that in for you. If there's need-based grants, and some colleges like to call need-based grants scholarships, so it gets confusing because merit's offered for 4 years most of the time, and need-based is assessed every year. So that's a really important thing to know the difference. But our program does that for you and says, oh, it's 10,000 of grants and 20,000 of merit. We put that in there. If there's loans on it, which most of them will have loans, either subsidized, unsubsidized, all unsubsidized, just depends on you and the school and your income and assets. We'll do all that for you. And then that shows up. And all you do is hit save, and there it is. It's in there. And then if you scroll down, once that's in there, like I have Stanford, then we're going to tell you, like, do you have a good chance of an appeal here and why? So we're trying to help you through this step in the journey. And you can put in unlimited awards in here. So definitely take advantage of this when you get to this piece of it. You've got to either have a picture, or ideally, if you've got a PDF of the financial aid award letter, that's what you want to upload and hit translate, and you'll be off to the races. You'll be getting some really good information, and we'll translate it for you. Okay, so let me go back to my deck here. So I want to take a minute to talk about, let me go forward here. Net price calculators. So you might have heard of these. And so it's important, this is an important thing to talk about when it comes to appeals. in case that's a term you're not familiar with, I think it was in 2010. The federal government told all the colleges, hey, you have to be more transparent for families. You need to put what's called a net price calculator on your website. Families can plug in their financials and you give them an idea of what they might get. What came through this, it was a great idea, right? There's no MPC police that watches the colleges, make sure that they are updating it, looking at the quality of the net price calculator. In fact, the federal government came out with a template to be nice to the colleges, and their template, the federal template, doesn't ask nearly enough information to give families valuable output. So keep that in mind that, that's why we say on here, be careful. Doesn't mean you shouldn't go to them. And some colleges, when you ask them about what you might get, they actually will send you to their net price calculator. And I've got stories of people where our net price projections that I just showed you versus the NPCs did not match. And more often than not, we were more spot on for whatever reason. Maybe they haven't updated it. I don't know if the colleges have updated their NPCs to reflect the federal changes. The FAFSA's changed. That SAI calculation, there's some significant differences compared to last year. So are those changes in there? For divorced families, most of the time on the front page, it says this isn't going to be super accurate. It says each parent should do one and add it together. Well, that's not always going to be accurate. So you can go and look at a good rule of thumb, if it's going to take you 15 or 20 minutes to get through, it's probably a better calculator, because what you're doing is a mini CSS profile. And you got a bunch of you have been in there. It's long, right? So the more questions you answer, the better the output, but it's also junk in, junk out. So if you don't understand the questions, you make a mistake. But I always tell families, if you're going to go in there and use it, print a PDF, whatever you want to do, save that output, because sometimes it's helpful in an appeal. It says on there that it's not binding and it's just to give you an idea, but you've got that data, it's on their website. But I would still strongly encourage you to set up your account. We actually had our data team do an analysis about a year ago, and we did a webinar on it, actually looking at different economic levels of families, low, mid, and high SAI families, and what the net price calculator showed and what we showed and what was closest to what the family actually got. So more sources are better, but don't rely on the net price calculator as your only option. That's my caution here, because people know about it and they think, well, that's the be end all. Okay, so our next slide is how, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to let JP talk for a few minutes, and then I'm going to show this slide, and you're going to see that most of what we have on our slide is pretty similar to somebody actually who's been in the trenches, who's going to share, and then I'll let Mike chime in too about like what's a good way to approach an appeal and why.
So the how do you appeal? To a certain degree, it depends on your circumstance, of course, but generally speaking, I always try to find a way where the student can lead the appeal. And if you're doing it a merit appeal to admissions, that would make sense. The student is the one who submitted their application to admissions, and that would make sense for them to obviously send that appeal to admissions. It'd be weird if a parent said, hey, my kid's amazing, give them more scholarship money. Like, yeah, that wouldn't make sense. But when we're doing need-based appeals, and it's usually maybe there's a change in circumstances, or just, hey, this is too much of a gap, we need more money. I will admit that is also kind of weird then for the student to really get into at least into the numbers aspect of it, right? So what I kind of do is I suggest, I try to find a way to make it like a hybrid approach where still the student is still taking the lead, but then the parent complements it with their part of the story, with the numbers, if you will. So the way I might suggest doing it is and the mechanics of it can vary from school to school, meaning some schools are going to say, hey, the student's going to fill out a form and maybe upload it to the student portal. Other schools are going to say, hey, email it to us. So the mechanics might be changed a little bit, but the basic idea of how I do it doesn't change. And this is, I usually have the student write what I call the love letter. Like, if it was, I'm going to pick on my alma mater, dear USC, it's been my dream to come to USC ever since I was a little kid. I'm so looking forward to studying in such and such program under Professor so-and-so. I am, since submitting my application, for admissions, I've gone on to keep my grades up, or I've won awards, or I've done, whatever, just say how I'm still a great student, but what, contribution I'm going to make to USC, all that stuff, a love letter, if you will. But then at some point it's going to transition to say, and I appreciate the financial aid you give me, but unfortunately there's been a change in our circumstances, or unfortunately my parents say this is just too expensive and I won't be able to come if we can't get some additional funding. Attached in this letter is a further explanation from my parents, something like that. And then the parents, you're going to go into the details. You go into your numbers, and you can say, hey, you can even reiterate, like, it's been our daughter or our son's dream to come to USC, but here's our financial reality, and you can give them your numbers, all that stuff. The main thing for the parents is, keep in mind, let's put it this way, think of the financial aid office as kind of like, in a way, like a CPA. They're dealing with numbers, they've got to crunch numbers, they're going to get audited. If they make a change, they're going to get audited, and they have to prove or justify why they made a change. So you got to provide them specific numbers, you got to provide them the documentation so that they can basically pass an audit, when they say, why did we change the financial aid? I would write it as logically, like I tend to think in terms of bullet points, and then I will maybe expand those bullet points into a story, but you want to make it, like a chronological, logical order, so they can follow along, and give them, like I said, all the documentation. If you say I lost my job and I now earn less, well, that's too vague. Like, give them the dollars. Okay, so be specific. If you're trying to leverage an award letter, like other school's award letter to yours, you're going to include documentation of what that other school's financial aid award was, or that scholarship was. Ask for a specific amount, like, anything when it comes to negotiation. Maybe slightly overshoot, knowing that they might pull it back a little bit. But again, that's the art of negotiation. But that's going to be kind of like my first attempt, like going in with an email or filling out their online form. After that, if they say no or something like that, then, or maybe they say, tell us more, or maybe they do a little bit, but I want more. I might then follow up with a phone call, again, where it's like a group phone call where your child can be on the phone call with you, initiate the call. Just know that if you call them, admittedly, usually the frontline people, and Mike probably can't say anything about this because he'd be in trouble, but usually the frontline people are usually grunt workers who can't really help. They can usually just say, oh yeah, we got this form, or oh, submit this generic form. You usually want to work your way up to a director level type person, and someone that has some juice and can say, hey, I can actually walk you through this and tell you what you can do. Third level after that is, if you're still not getting what you want, if it's possible, visit them in person. A lot of my families are finding success because they're going to they did the appeal, via email or an online submission, and then they went to like this admitted student day fair that the school offered, and they got to meet the financial aid folks in person, and we got a lot of good results out of that. So that's my general advice on how to submit an appeal.
All right, thank you for that. Mike, do you want to, we're gonna wrap up soon, but do you have any tidbits you want to share, or?
Yeah, just I mean, everything that JP said was great. One additional thing, when you're kind of writing that love letter to the university, be specific in terms of if you've had connections with specific people on campus, an admissions counselor, someone in financial aid, a professor, anyone, like reference that person and reference why that interaction made you more in love with that school. So it's more real. It's not just, I love the university for these general reasons.
The
You're hitting on
campus is
something.
beautiful.
Right. Right. Yeah. You're
Yeah,
diving
no,
into specifics.
exactly. Like name a program, name a professor, not just like it's a pretty campus. No.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the where they're sitting, it's like they want to feel like if we give this family more money, this kid's actually going to come. They're really, because they're not a lot of these schools, most of them are nonprofits, but they're businesses. Like they have expenses, they have a bottom line. So you got to think about where they're sitting, and that's why demonstrated interest is a big deal at a lot of schools, because if the parents and the kids have been interacting a lot, then it seems like they're more interested in the school, and that's logical. So let's finish up here. I've got a quick example of a before and after, which was this was last year, but still a very, very relevant sort of appeal. So this family, Occidental out in California, private school, they require the CSS profile. So this student got a nice merit award for 12.5. The family was also eligible for need-based aid, almost 22,000. They had a lot of home equity. So their primary home was on the table at Oxy because the CSS profile, most of those schools look at it in some amount. And we have tranches of that in our software, that range you saw for the institutional SAI, that's the reason that was in there. So they got gift aid of 34,287. So one of our experts worked with the family, and they basically appealed saying, hey, we don't have a lot of retirement assets. Our home is a big part of our retirement picture, which is true for a lot of people, right? It's an investment for all of us if we're lucky enough to own a home, and eventually we downsize and we need it for retirement. So that's what they appealed on, like take some of that off the table. So the students still got their merit aid. They weren't appealing on merit, but look what happened to the grants. They jumped to 49.5. So this school said, all right, we're listening and we're going to increase the grants. So that was the before, that's the after. Huge increase. Am I here telling you, are the three of us telling you this is what's going to happen every time? Absolutely not. We're just planting the seed that this can happen. JP had a huge one that he shared with the team earlier today. How much was that? The increase? JP?
Yeah, I got a family just a couple hours ago sent me an email saying, thank you, that little love letter appeal. But with admissions, they got an extra 27,000. It brought up the scholarship total to 90,000 over the 4 years.
Yeah, so granted, doesn't happen every time. I have families that write me and say, we got an extra 4,000. That's $16,000 in your pocket, right? And to be totally transparent, Oxy could have done this because they're like, yeah, we look at all of home equity and we like this kid. We want this kid, or this kid fits a certain bucket. These are things we don't know about. None of us know unless we're behind the scenes at these colleges, but just planting the seed that this is usually, if you have grounds for appeal, and it depends on the school and where your child fits in the academic profile, there's a lot of pieces here, right? But there's a lot of different ways to approach it. And last, but definitely not least, because the three of us were talking in the green room, that this is a big stressor for families and want to take it off your plate, appealing will not hurt the admission offer. They're not going to come in and say, how dare you ask for more money, even if you got money, right? And you no longer are welcome here in the fall. That just doesn't happen. If you think about it legally, they'd be on really, really shaky ground. The worst that happens is you've got some time and effort and you're told no. If it's not that somebody wrote in about a college and I said, yeah, haven't seen a lot of successful appeals there unless this and this happens. Like there are situations where you're more likely to have, and JP talked about that. There's no absolutes. I see a successful appeals at state schools for merit and need-based aid. It's just a different dynamic of when we see it and how often we see it. So no school is really off the table. So just please realize that this is a part of the process. And some people had written in and already asking about loans and should I take out Parent Plus loans? That's the next step in your journey. And then figuring out how to pay. We are going to do webinars on that. So that's getting a little bit ahead of the game. It's a good thing to think about if you know you've got a gap there, and definitely you can talk to us about that as well. And we're going to do a whole webinar on that because it could be more than an hour to talk through loans. So we're getting to the end of our hour here. So I referenced this a couple times. We are here to support you. And I was saying to the guys before we went live, I usually say, hey, I know we covered a lot of stuff. And you're probably saying this was great. I learned a lot of stuff, and you might be tempted to go back to your busy life and put it over here. If you've got a senior, which most of you do, and you're chomping at the bit to appeal, I think there is a sense of urgency for you, but let us support you, and we can support you through one-on-one consults. That's the best way to walk you through the appeals process. And you've just seen two of our superstars here, Mike and JP, on our pros team and are here waiting to help. So let me share my screen again. I'm going to pull up the page, and let me make sure I have it. I'm clicked on that. There we go. And I will have JP put a link to this, to our landing page in the chat. But basically, you can book an hour with one of our experts, Mike and JP being two of them. And it's $349 to book the hour, and also to get a year of our premium software. If you're already in our software, then it's $299. So you don't need to pay again because you're already in the software. And I'll go back in the software in a minute and show you how you easily do that. You can do it right through this link on this page. As our groupies know, we always reward people that stay on and are live with us. The coupon code for 24% off either one. So you're going to save $83 if you're in the free version, and $72 and change. I'm rounding if you already are in the software. So it's a very nice savings. All you do when you get in there where it says add promotional code, look for that, because a lot of people miss it. Putting get the money 24, and that gives you 24% off. It expires tonight. JP and I are on the West Coast. If you're on the East Coast, you got a while. You can stay up late and watch TV, and you can still put in your discount. Or Mike, he's Central Time. But if you could put that coupon code in the chat as well, JP. So we will follow up tomorrow, but this one expires. So if you think you need a meeting, even if you're not ready to meet, just go in and purchase it, and then you can go back in and schedule it tomorrow or the next day. And let me share my screen back in the software, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. It's really easy. So you got to set up if you set up a free account, it's going to say upgrade up here instead of talk with an expert. Hit upgrade, and then it's going to say you're going to pick what you want. You're going to say you want the $349 to be in the software, so you can upload all your reward letters like I showed you earlier. Put in your discount code, pay, and then you'll be able to pick first available. You can go in, pick JP from the drop down, pick Mike from the drop down. You want to apply to state schools? You got your butt. Now, if you need to appeal to OU, he can't meet with you. But any other state schools, he can meet with you, because that would be a bit of a conflict of interest. And he can talk to you about all appeals, but he's very, very knowledgeable on the state part. But pick these guys, you know them. I'm on there too, but I don't do this all day. And time is of the essence potentially, right? But if you know, I don't have my awards yet, but you want to lock in it, just do it. If you're already in the premium software, then it will say talk to an expert. You just click here and then purchase your consultation. And I'll show you, it's really small, but see where it says apply coupon? It'll be $299 if you're already in the software. Just hit that and make sure you put in get the money 24, it'll immediately back it out. You go through that process, and then you go pick JP, go pick Mike from the drop down. You're off to the races. You'll see their calendar. You pick a time that works, you get your Zoom link, and you're good to go. If you want to lock in the discount for more than one meeting, you can, but you need to schedule your first meeting and then go back in, and it's not one per email. So you can use it a couple times if you want. If you know you want to talk about borrowing down the road, or you might have 2 appeal meetings, feel free to do that. But this is where the return on investment tends to be pretty huge, right? I can't promise that everybody on this webinar has a great appeal that they can do, but I'm sure a lot of you, I've talked to a lot of people over the last couple months, and people have changed in circumstance, like Mike was talking about. Stuff comes up, and appeal opportunities for merit are there with competing offers. So, like I said, even $1,000, that could be $4,000 in your pocket. So, you guys want to add anything before we sign off here?
See, no, I think you nailed it. Like you said, even if you get $1,000, if it took you 30 minutes to write an appeal letter, and you get $1,000 back for it, 4,000 over 4 years, it's a good return on your time. So
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. And as Mike shared, they're there. They know appeals are coming. They're ready for them, right? They've got specialists to deal with it. So, all right. Well, thank you, JP and Mike, for being here. Got my superstars, made me look good. Thank you for the emojis. I appreciate it. Everybody have a lovely evening. Don't forget to jump on there before midnight Pacific. And we will talk to you soon. Have a good night, everybody.